Siaka Massaquoi is an actor living in Los Angeles. He's also an American patriot and more recently has been the target of a January 6th political persecution. Siaka is joining me today to tell his story. This is a fascinating story and it's a cautionary tale of what happens when the government engages in political persecution. This is the Heidi St. John podcast. Thanks for joining me today. Stick around. I think you're going to be encouraged. Well, Siaka, welcome back to the Heidi St. John podcast. It's really, really good to see you.
Well, it's been too long, Heidi. Thank you for having me back. And it's kind of crazy why we're talking again, you know?
I know. It totally is. So in the intro, I just prepped everybody because this is a pretty heavy topic, right? I don't know if you saw we're going to talk about the insurrection. Shh.
The who?
The insurrection. Shh. What's going on? I saw a former Capitol Police officer on MSNBC. I don't know if you saw this the other day. And he's written a book about that horrible day that will live on in infamy. Yeah. Worse than Pearl Harbor. Worse than 9/11, the worst thing that's happened to our democracy. And the guy who's interviewing him over on MSNBC, all these pansies over there for reals, right? And he can't even get through the interview. He's like, I'm going to try to just get through this. And just my heart is just so broken over what they try to do to our country. I'm like, why don't you care about what they're doing to our country right now? Like the open borders. Why don't you care about Antifa and the fact that they practically burned down half the cities in the United States? Why don't you care about the fact that we got lied to, that people lost their jobs? Why do you care about any of that? But oh no, American citizens that went into the Capitol are being hunted down like animals, truly. Right. And prosecuted, which to me it's a political persecution coming down from the Biden administration, who's using and weaponized the Department of Justice, just like they're calling, parents who want to know what the heck's going on in the public school system. You're a domestic terrorist if you want to know that. Siaka Massaquoi goes and stands for 71 seconds in the doorway of the Capitol on January 6th, and they want to prosecute you. So tell us a little bit about you. There's a lot to unpack here, but I want people to get a bit of an introduction to you. We were introduced, obviously, by our friend Danielle. Yeah. And I become a super fan. You've done some work for the Babylon Bee. You're a Hollywood actor. You obviously love the country. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, and thank you for having me back on the show. Like we said before, it's been too long. I grew up outside of Chicago in Evanston, Illinois. I was born in upstate New York, Rochester. Moved out here in 2004. It's actually so crazy. It's going to be 20 years in Los Angeles now. And I didn't.
Wow. You survived 20 years in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Which is, I still don't understand it, but apparently I made it. I moved out here to be an actor and chase that dream, and went through my ups and downs. I had my substance abuse issues with alcohol. Just fortunate enough that God helped me out of that position, but I didn't know God as I know him now, that when I got sober in 2016, March 5th, 2016, by the way.
I love that. Praise God.
March 15th, 2015 or 2016. And so, that's when things turned around in my life, was when I went back into the rooms to get help. And moving forward, that was the first time also I voted for President Trump, and only the second time I voted, period. First time I voted was for Barack Obama. Just tell you how far.
So would you say would you call yourself then a Democrat or a progressive sort of before you voted for Trump? What changed your mind?
Well, so when I was, I grew up outside of Chicago in Evanston. Just to give you a little kind of feel about where I grew up, and it's sad to say now, Evanston is the first place to start giving reparations back for housing discrimination, and it also has just become one of the first schools, my high school, to offer segregated classrooms now. So I was in a space. I was in a space where it was kind of a mix. It was such a mixed bag. They taught us of the greatness of this country, and, Voltaire, and I may not agree with what you have to say, but I will, fight to my death for your right to say it. But at the same time, there was undergirding of like, one day a revolution is going to be is going to happen to fix all the wrongs in this country, i.e. communism, right, and Marxism. So you had a mix of both. I mean, I was in one of the first race swapped plays that back in the day was Hans Christian Andersen, and I got to play Hans. I was probably the best one, but still. So we started just to let you know.
I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen a black man play Hans Christian Andersen. I bet you rocked it though.
I got the tape, and that's how long ago it was. VHS. I was a liberal. I believed the stuff. I was also at the same time I was secular and didn't believe God. Didn't believe he existed, or that it was all just a construct made of man, and they changed the books and blah 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 blah. All the stuff the media, the secular world is telling you, the culture is telling you, and yet I was never brave enough to ever open a page in the Bible and read it for myself, really. And then I grew up, went to college, was stuck in substance abuse land. That's where it really went off the rails for me. And then, didn't get to finish school there because of everything that happened, and I had to come back to Chicago. Then ended up driving out to LA. I'm going to chase the dream. Got some success every once in a while, but I was still struggling with substance. And I thought the bartending world was part of what it meant to be an actor. So I found myself working harder to become a bartender in Hollywood than to become an actor in Hollywood. And I made it. I became a bartender in Hollywood. But after, I did it. Thanks. I did it, Mom. No. So it's like, but then,
Mom, I've arrived. I'm a bartender.
I'm a bartender. Right? Please send
you and AOC.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you something funny about that. I was actually recruited at one of the bars I worked at. I was recruited by a DNC person. And he's like, look, you ever thought about running for office? I'm like, man, I got too many skeletons, because I thought my DUIs would get me eliminated from even running. And he's like, no, don't worry. We can clear that up and let me know. And then as years passed and I thought about it, and it was like this bartender became someone. I'm like, oh, wow. They actually were just going to grab someone who could perform basically well enough to do the talking points. But and then, like I said, I had tried my first time with sobriety in 2013, and it was going well. Life turned around. And after 19 months, I thought that I understood it. And so I thought I could handle my drinking. And fortunate enough for me, I was around great people that have shown me love in those 2 years prior. And I also, I could hear what they had to say. So the Lord only allowed 5 months for me to be in that darkness again before I was like, all right, now I got to stop. So that's when on March 15th of 2016, I went back to a program. And like I said, everything changed. I got closer to the Lord. I saw him save my life, and then I could go back and think about how he saved my life before. So it all made sense. Then we get to 2019, 2020. And my career is going great. In the last 3 years, I just flew out to my family's home country of Liberia, shot a movie there about the history of the country. So it was the first time back as an adult. I'm on television. I have commercial campaigns where people can literally see me hanging up, on a Verizon poster in the airports. I'm doing plays, doing musicals. I'm living my dream. And 2020 comes, and I'm a crazy wacko conservative, so I've been reading Epoch Times. So in the winter of 2019,
we can't have that.
I knew what was happening. I saw all the COVID stuff happening over on the other side of the world. Yeah. I was trying to warn my mom, and she didn't want to hear it, and this, that, and the other. Then all the other stuff started coming out. At the same time, the panic started happening here. And so then I tried to warn my mom the other way, and then it's like, no one was hearing it. But what really got me was, and switching over a few things, getting sober. The tenets of program basically show you what you're responsible for and why your responsibility is truly what indicates whether you're going to have a good or a bad experience in the current, circumstance that you're in. It's not based on somebody else. It's really based on you. That ultimately led me to wanting to know more truth, which led me to, well, where did this come from? This came from Judeo-Christian values. Okay, well, what's going on here? So I started to explore God from a Christian perspective, which I had background in, but I threw away in my 20s. And so as time kept going on, getting closer, and as becoming a conservative in 2016, and seeing like that life, and seeing how on the other side, people here in Hollywood, people I've close to, how they people who before 2016 I could have rational discussions with and come to some type of understanding, or a point where I go, man, this person knows what they're talking about, or I see how they got there, to losing it over a red hat, over, Trump, anyone who it really blew my mind. And it's the kind of thing when you see people screaming on the highway for whatever, for Palestine or abortion rights or whatever it is, that some of their behavior and the way they come at you, it's like, I don't want to be on your team just based on that. Before we even get into the topic, I don't want to be on your team. So when I talk to some people and they go straight into the offended, absurd space of life, it was people who we could talk about movies in depth and with high criticism. But as soon as we shift over here, that's it. All the critical thinking just went out of the water.
Yeah.
It was fascinating. So that really kind of helped solidify, push me away from liberal mindset. But that summer of love in 2020 really, that I say that put it over the edge when I saw that here in my industry, that a lot of mainstream artists were putting together a bail fund for a lot of these individuals who were destroying and killing people, especially a lot of Black folks, and all for the guise of that Black Lives Matter, which it hit a point when a 6-month-old was shot and killed around the corner from where my mom lived in the stroller during the day. And I was like, well, what am I truly being
That's
quiet
Chicago?
for?
Where was that?
Yeah, that was in Chicago.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself at the time, like, okay, so what am I really being quiet for? I won't work in the industry anymore that is actually funding terrorism like that. Like, you know what I mean? You had to, especially getting closer to what I think God is, and really searching for him. And these things are starting to collide. I saw the way people treated individuals. Like when I said I was around good people that helped me get sober, I saw the way people who have been with them for years, and they've supplied with jobs and support and been at weddings and there for the first kids, how they were talking about this husband and wife team because they were Trump supporters. And I saw how it didn't matter about the history they had with them. And it would just be indignant. It just, all these different factors really just disgusted me about what was going on in our country. And the summer of love just really put it over the top. And so for me, I was just done being hiding. I'm in my nature, I'm kind of a big expressive guy. So that's how I will move in that. But I think initially people need to be done with hiding. And that was my kind of rock bottom for hiding. And then ever since then, it's the government has put me on a censorship list. I got
how
raided.
Do you think that happened? So you say, and this is what is so unbelievable to me. I mean, that the government puts you on a censorship list, that they've actually been to your house, they've raided. I mean, we're not talking about people who are threats to the country. We're talking about just people who love the country and have differences of political opinion. This is political persecution. But why are you on a censorship? Like, what would they say? Was their reason? Because I mean, if this is all over, I was Googling your name, dude, before, and I usually don't do that, right? Because we all know it's algorithm based and it's garbage. But dude, you're all over the news right now, and the obviously, the opinions are very wildly. I saw one guy put a picture of you, here's Siaka in the Capitol. It makes it sound like you went in there with machetes and you started, chopping things up or taking artwork off the walls. Tell us a little bit about what happened on that day. So first of all, you went to the Capitol like millions of other people on January the 6th. Walk us through what happened that day.
And I'll tell you, my reason was different than most people who actually went to the Capitol. So that day, I was there with a friend of mine. We stayed at the JW Marriott right across the street from Freedom Plaza, which was not too far away from the Rose Garden and just there in the Washington Monument area where people were standing for the speech. So we walked over, and it's packed, of course. We ended up going by the Washington Monument, and there was a couple people I remember we saw, I think it was either Vietnamese or Koreans for Trump, like huge sign. We took a picture and everything. And then we stood in an area that was by a tree that so we could kind of it was, I remember somebody was standing in the tree. So we're watching the speech and all that good stuff. The speech, it's super cold out there. The speech ends. Everyone starts to kind of slowly meander over. We're laughing. I'm talking to some guy who comes over. Me and my friend were laughing with some people, and people start singing and all that. But at this point, from 2020 on, I've been going to rallies. At this point, this is my third time at DC. I've been to rallies. So the idea of going to the Capitol rally in this cold, honestly, for me, I was at the point where I was like, okay, I'm good. So I asked her, I was like, well, let's go back to the hotel, right? So we went back to the hotel, and I was curious to find out what the media was going to say about this, because just like anything and everything else Trump related, they'll say opposite of what's happening. And so for me, I turned on MSNBC. There was a reporter there, and had no one really in the background. It was kind of empty, and it just she was just saying like, oh, it was a dark day, and the shots been fired, there's blood on the ground, and kind of making it sound like it was just a terroristic attack, which I just knew, being around as many people, I'm like, no, this can't be true. So my impetus of going down to the Capitol was to find the reporter, stand behind the camera, and be like that crazy guy behind her going, you're lying, like that, just kind of rap. Like, that's really what I was going to do, because I do understand you get physical with anyone, and especially in certain cases that you're going down, period. I'm not an idiot, So I wasn't trying to go to do anything physical with anyone. I was going down to find the camera crew to say that they were lying. So then I headed down there, which takes about 30 minutes just to get down there. So, and this is out even in reports that, news reports that are favorable to me. I didn't get down there till about an hour after all the major, events that we now know happened. So I get down there. I was in a sense walking down there whilst maybe some of this was happening. So by the time I get down there, I'm looking around, and people, again, just meandering around. Didn't seem like there's any kind of negative energy going on. I get to the point where I'm close to the scaffold where the American flag was, and I bump into two or three guys that I knew from Beverly Hills rally. And this other lady recognized us, so we stopped and we did a little quick interview about how amazing this is. And at the end of our interview, the national anthem, people start singing the national anthem. Excuse me. And it was just really amazing to see people come out and want to express themselves in this way. Again, that's how I was seeing it at the time. So we start walking up the scaffold, and it wasn't until I get to the top of the scaffold where you can kind of smell a little bit of pepper spray like it was happening. That's something that happened in that sense. So then I walk around the side of the scaffold. I don't go towards the bleachers. I go kind of towards the building, and I see a bunch of people kind of still standing around there. I do see this it happened twice. There was a guy who tried to push other guys forward, screaming, "Let's go!" Right, and that hit me because men don't do that. Like real men, they step forward and say, "Follow me." They don't push other guys forward. So that was something that looked weird to me. I did see somebody had thrown back a pepper spray that the cops had, and it hit a guy, one of the police officers, in the head. And then it just kind of stopped. And then I kept walking around and recording and just checking out what's going on. I'm recording people, and they're saying their piece. One guy's like, "They're cowards hiding in there." I see like a glass broken. I'm just like, wow, people are mad. Like, look, I can understand people getting upset. So I start walking towards that doorway. And there's these two guys walking with me. They were all fully tactical gear, completely masked up. Now I can pretty much, and with my own opinion, I can guess that they were probably agents, because later on they had footage that could only be from them standing right behind me, showing me walking in. So I'm walking in. As I'm going, I hear somebody said, I actually even asked the guys, I was like, I was like, this is where they're going in? He's like, yeah, they're going in over there. As I get closer, I hear somebody on my videotape, you can hear them say, "Hey, this is where they're letting us in." So at no point do I think, well, we shouldn't be here, everyone get the hell out. At no point do I think that's going on. If anything, I'm thinking they're managing kind of what's going on. They're letting it happen so that it doesn't get crazier. So we're shuffling through the doorway in the sense like you're going into a rock concert or something. But then we get stopped right there, as you've probably seen in the footage now. We get stopped right at the doorway. There was a bunch of cops just kind of standing there, and everyone just kind of froze. So I stopped, and I'm just like, all right. And as you see in the video, I reach my hand out to get because it's not because we're walking more, it's because we can't walk. So I want to get anything I can with the reach of my arm. Side to side, I talked to one cop on this side. I say, "Hey, man, I heard," because the rumor at this point that people had gotten in Nancy Pelosi's office. I was like, did somebody get into her office? And he just shakes his head like, I don't know. I was like, oh, okay. And as I turn over this way, a guy in full riot gear comes up. He goes, I need you guys to go back the other way. I go, I got it. We're going to do it. And I turn around, I turn back. I go, you see, we're being reasonable. We're not being crazy. I just want to make sure it's out there. And I'm recording all this as well. And this is on footage that has been, received from, helpstophate.com, where it shows me on the front saying and doing all of this. I turn back and tell the people behind me, guys, go back the other way. So, I'm giving an order by an, official right then and there. And not only am I complying with it, but I'm also directing that to other people behind me. I walk outside and I see what is now.
So when you're saying, go back the other way, you've been kind of standing in the doorway of the Capitol at this point, and now you're saying, never mind, go back the other way. You're telling them go outside, right?
Yeah, because we've been told go the other way. So it's like, all right, I got it.
Yeah.
I'll pass it on. Let's go. And in that video that's facing me, you hear somebody go, this guy's been helping us get these guys out. So it's like, as far as I'm walking around just thinking, man, this is, at the most part, I'm like, wow, this is crazy. I can't believe this is happening. So I walk out the side and I see what is now that infamous window that they threw a flag through the first time, and then people jump through to open the door. I'm standing by that window and I'm like, man, they even got stickers on the wall. I'm kind of cracking jokes because this is like, I'm an actor. This is what I do. And I go around and I see that guy who got hit in the head with the bear spray. And I go, hey, man, are you okay? I saw they hit you in the head with that. That wasn't cool. He was like, kind of shrugged it off. And I was like, I heard there's a curfew. Who's going to endorse that? And he just kind of gave a nod and I joked. I was like, you don't care. You're off the clock soon, huh? And I just kind of laughed off. Then I walked back around, talked to some more cops over here. They didn't move or say anything. And then I walked away. Before I left the Capitol, as I was walking to the other side of the Capitol, there was another man that I saw trying to push people forward to get into
the building.
Yeah, well, at this point, there were cops standing in front of the building door, and a guy was trying to push them towards the cops. So he was trying to start something over there. One cop came down, and this big dude comes over and throws this guy to the side and then throws the cop back in line. And then I just left. I'm like, all right. And I cracked a joke with someone walking by. I go, you know what's funny? None of the cars that were parked there were on fire or touched or anything. I was like, this is a BLM rally. These all things would be on fire right now. And some people laughed. And then I went back to my hotel room thinking nothing of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not ever thinking that decision, if you could go back and do it again, looking back now, what's your take now?
You mean knowing what I know now, or just being in that same mindset?
Just knowing what you know now.
Knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have gone into the setup. It was a trap, They just announced they're going after people who are on the grass. And the crazy thing about it is they're only announcing that to scare people because they've already been going after people who are on the grass. There are people who are former U.S. agents who are on the grass that are fighting for their, life right now that they're trying to give 20 years to. There is a woman who was pregnant and she had under house arrest for just staying on the grass. So going after people on the grass isn't a new thing. No, of course, knowing what I know now, I would not going there. I went there because of what I believe the laws of our land allowed us to do. That's why I went there. I didn't go there to do any and the crazy thing is, like I said before, I'm not going to go attack somebody, especially if they have a gun. That's stupid. You're going to lose that.
Right.
I'm not going to go if I was someone who really wanted to go after any type of government agency, I'm not going to go fully faced open, wearing MAGA gear, being like, yeah, and smiling with my phone. Like, that's stupid. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And so what you see that is set up, and you heard it in Joe Biden's statement when he rallied off those numbers. It's got to show you, look how bad it is. Look how bad it was. We got them, though. You trust us, we'll get these bad guys that they've been telling us are bad guys for the last, 8 years now. So to me, it's like it was a setup. And I've seen now enough footage to go, well, why is a cop telling people to go forward and then walking the other way? Why are they opening the doors for people? Why are they taking down barriers and then charging people with trespassing? Like, what? You took the barriers down.
Yeah.
You charged
Well,
them.
it's super sketchy. I mean, I looked at that and I thought to myself, man, given the political climate and the way that we've seen the Biden administration treat even parents, the Department of Justice, and the way that they look at anyone who disagrees with their point of view. I mean, you can look at what happened on January 6th and say, okay, that's unwise. Like you might go, that was unwise given we didn't know who, maybe didn't know who you were tangling with or whatever. But to prosecute and persecute and terrorize these people and break down their doors and treat them as if they had walked into the Capitol and tried to assassinate someone, it's almost unbelievable to watch.
Well, that's the part when you talk about our Fourth Amendment, right? Now, legal search and seizure, and that's what it was in there for. It's in there because King George's men would come in and just take people out of houses, stay there, take their property. And that's what ended up happening to me. What I believe happened to me when they raided my house on June 10th of 2021. They came in, guns drawn, taking everyone out of the house, including my godsons 3 and 6, and wouldn't give me the ability to call a lawyer because they told me this is not an arrest, or you're not being charged, so this is not what it is.
That's amazing.
Then turned around, and when I asked for the warrant multiple times, when they first denied it and finally gave it to me, it was the one-page cover, because apparently the FBI doesn't have to give you the full warrant at the time of a raid. That's also why they classify as a raid, so this way they can come up with whatever later. They don't have to give you, if it was just a phone call, then they have to come to your door and go, all right, here you go. But the fact that classified as like an operation in that capacity, then they have to make sure their safety goes first. Collecting, doing whatever they have to do to get the information is what goes first. But it's only okay if they can somehow wrap it in some type of conspiracy or RICO or terrorism type of an attack. So that's how they were able to start moving on people like myself. And so when you start to see how they moved in that way, the fact that I asked for a lawyer multiple times wasn't given that. The fact that I asked for the warrant multiple times initially wasn't given that. I actually reached out to them and asked them to, after they left, and they took my laptop and my cell phone and my MAGA hats and all that stuff, and still have not returned it to this day. We, within the first week, asked, can we get the full warrant? The response from the U.S. attorney was, your client doesn't deserve to know what's in the warrant. That's what was told.
Are you serious?
I have
That's
the email.
Terrifying.
And so
that's terrifying.
A week and a half after was once we threatened to file a complaint, like a couple days later, we got the full warrant, which happened to have everything listed that they took. Go figure, right?
Wow.
It was wild to see how it was working. It was wild to hear that from like your government saying, basically, so I mean, from my perspective, you just came in with guns drawn and you stole my stuff. And then I ask, why are you coming? You go, you don't need to know. Like, isn't that mobster stuff? We're protecting you, but give us half your product. What? How's that? Who's protecting me from who at this point, right? And so for 2 years, then right after that, we decided to file a complaint against the FBI and the agents that came into my house for violating my Fourth Amendment. We went about 2 years, and within that 2-year time, every time I fly, I have to go through extra security at check-in. I can't check in the day before. I have to sit there for about 40 minutes as they call up a number and talk to whoever I was up there to verify who I am. I have to go to TSA to give me a full pat down, go through all my stuff. Then when I get to the gate, I have to do a whole search and pat down again. Now, if someone books a ticket with me on there and we share a ticket together, that person has to go through it as well. Now that my wife is married to me and she has the same last name, now she has to go through that as well. Also, because we found this out with the air marshal, the Operation Quiet Skies is where air marshals now are following people from J6. I just spotted them on my last trip where I had 2 guys following me. Every time I get off the airplane, they take a picture of me and my bags. And they follow me to my next destination, where then to get back on the next plane, I have to get searched again. So this last trip, I was searched 6 times before I got home.
The thing is, here, I mean, you know what? I'm not an attorney. I'm certainly not a prosecuting attorney, but it seems to me that if you are a real threat to the United States, they wouldn't just charge you with a misdemeanor, right? they come
Right.
at you with the full, they just, instead of keeping you overnight in jail, they release you on your own recognizance, right? But instead, they're taxpayer money, by the way. It's going to these air marshals who are following like old ladies through the airport. It's not just Siaka Massaquoi, right? They're following old ladies through the airport. And we've got a mass. You're not a threat. I mean, clearly not a threat to the United States. You know what is a
I'm too broke to be a threat, man. Like, that's the thing. It's like, I'm not in a position to. I'm just trying to keep the lights on around here. It's like, what are you talking about? And I'm trying to build a family at the end of the day.
Well, and they don't. And honestly, I mean, you're what the bigger threat about you is you're a black Republican, but that's a pretty big threat right now, right there. But it's discouraging to me to just see, to see you have to contend against something that is so, unreasonable and even irrational. And it feels awful lot like a political persecution, which we're seeing this happen to a lot of the J6 people. There were some of the things that happened at the Capitol that day that I was just like, oh, come on, you guys, like, screw your head on straight. Like, you could see some of those guys, you're in trouble for that, But
that's the thing and we saw there was an appellate court decision just yesterday that said it's okay to convict even passive members of January 6th for disorderly conduct. So what that's saying is ultimately all this, and as much as they demonize anyone who's there on J6 to be able to pass these precedents, like FBI going after people for misdemeanors. It's not FBI going after J6 for misdemeanors. It's now the FBI can go after people for misdemeanors and do it at any top of the level that they can. It's not that people now, like, it's not, they're just, as they're throwing the full book at everything they can do with them. When it comes to the friend of mine said, Steve Friend said, the punishment is in the process. They want to show that they can do this, and they want to see how much they can do, because we've never really seen it to this capacity. And it started with General Flynn. And you saw how they did him, where they used lawfare to cripple him. And now they're seeing how can they do it to all these different people. And they're coming after people in ways where it's not going to just be MAGA, or it's not just going to be America First, or it's not going to just be Christian nationalists, which don't ever use, by the way. It's going to eventually be any and everyone that decides to stand up and step out of the circle or step out of the box. They're establishing the ability to do these things.
Mm-hmm. And that is what people should be concerned about. Because some people could look at your case and go, Siaka, you're stupid. Like, you went to you walked into the Capitol, don't do that. But what people need to open their eyes and look at is this is not about Siaka Massaquoi. What you did was not a threat to the nation. What they are doing is they're laying the groundwork for the political persecution of anyone who dares voice an opinion that is different. And they're using the J6 people to do it. I have a really good friend whose son was in the area, in the DC area that day. And before he even went, she called him on the phone. She was like, don't go near, go listen to the speech and then go home, because you just don't know what's going to happen, right? With tempers are the way that they are. People are frustrated, and rightfully so, right? We watched the most bizarre election in the history of the country. People are like, what the heck's going on? I want to read to you something I read in the Orange County Register and just get you to respond to it. This is Susan Shelley, and she wrote, it is now beyond any dispute that the FBI and the Department of Justice are persistently engaging in disparate treatment of Americans based on their political views. A new report by Christopher Rufo and City Journal observes that, quote, accountability hasn't been forthcoming for the riots and violence during the summer of 2020. In Portland, Oregon, where, I live next door to Portland, federal prosecutors quietly dismissed nearly half the cases against the George Floyd rioters. And in Seattle, ringleaders of the ill-fated autonomous zone in Seattle were never charged with crimes. These were people that were carrying machine guns around the city. They were openly threatening people. They were setting fire to cars, fire to federal buildings. They weren't standing in the entryway of a federal building. They were setting fire to federal buildings. And yet in Seattle, they never got charged. So riddle me that, Siaka. What do you make of that?
It's okay. So it's clear gaslighting, right? It's gaslighting at the highest level, and the powers that be right now running the show are going to use us against ourselves, right? And it tells me something. It tells me that what they really want to do is have an excuse to stop us from getting to the vote. That's what it tells me. Everything they're doing, they want us to snap. And as soon as you snap, now, well, there's a reason why we have to have martial law. Well, there's a reason why we have to suspend the vote. You see them poking the bear over there with China and Taiwan. You see them poking the bear over there in Ukraine. They want Russia to go crazy. You see them even in, the Hamas-Israel situation. It's like, you see them poking over there and they're poking here. And so what does that tell me? When you can poke and cause chaos, then the norms then aren't easily accessible. And right now, this avenue, how he even phrased everything is to scare you away from the vote, scare you away from seeing exactly what's happening. And so what I try to do now is I want to expose all this stuff and want to tell people what's going on, but it's not to just get you furious enough where you want to grab somebody by the throat, because that's not what you want to do. What you want to do is you get organized and make sure you and everyone you know and in your neighborhood go out and vote. There's no excuses anymore. There's no one area too blue to try anymore. There's no, is my vote's not going to count anymore because we don't show up like we're supposed to. That's really what we're facing right now is the fact that as American citizens, our civic duty we've left waned to somebody else to take care of it. And now we're seeing.
Well, that's the narrative for so many things in the country right now, right? I mean, that's why we've lost our children, because parents have decided to co-opt the parenting of their children with the government school system. My friend Ken Ham calls it the anti-God system. He's so right. Jesus said, you're either for me or against me. Well, are the public schools for God? No. Well, then they're against him. So when we send our kids to public schools, we're sending them to the anti-God schools. And we have rightly pointed out now that for generations, we have been, largely because we're lazy, we have decided we don't need to vote. We decided we don't run for office. This is how we lost our libraries. It's how we lost the parks. It's how come we have drag queens stripping in front of 3-year-olds and gyrating around in ridiculous fashion in front of little kids in our parks. It's because, just regular people like you and me just trying to have a job and build a life, when the far left in this country is seeing this as a religion, and they've actually been steadily working toward getting into these positions of authority. Now we're here. And
but the hope is, and it may not look like it, but it tells me the more they work to scare us away, the more powerful it actually is. So yes, we have all the history of everything, and it can look bleak because we do have a drag queen in the library right now. But if there wasn't a chance to change it, then they wouldn't be screaming at you to try to stop you from voting. They wouldn't be telling you things like your vote's lost in a blue city, or a blue state. They wouldn't be telling you these things over and over. They wouldn't try to scare you away from Trump so much that if you vote for him at all, then for some reason you're anti. They wouldn't be doing that. If that thing wasn't that powerful, just like ivermectin. Look how they pushed that away from everyone because it worked. So if we understand that at the end of the day, the goal line is the vote, and to work as much and as hard as possible to make sure that you do not do anything in your own life that can get that ability taken away from you. There's going to be things where they'll come and try to snatch it away from you. I'm not talking about that. But being physical out there, wanting to be destructive and take matters into your own hands. We're not in America where people can give that a Dirty Harry thing anymore. But we are in a place where that vote is still that important. It's
really important. And I think we need to stop with this. I have said this for a long, long time. We need to stop touting the whole, our elections don't matter, everything is rigged. I really wish Trump would knock it off, because the only thing he is succeeding in doing is disenfranchising the voters who are just like, well, if it's rigged, then what the heck am I even voting for? We've got to stop with this. And I said, and I know some conservatives don't like me for it, but have you noticed the Republicans only complain about rigged elections when they lose? They're not complaining about rigged elections when they win. They complain when they lose. And to me, that's just stupid. It's like, you know what? Be quiet. You're not helping the conversation.
And it's a numbers game. That's why the warnings, if people aren't talking about the numbers and getting out and they're talking about other stuff, then it's set up to cause you to feel certain things, right? And that's
exactly right. Yeah.
For example, if we had 50 to 60% of Republicans vote in our last election here in
we would win.
We would have had a conservative mayor for the first time in LA's history.
Yep.
So So it's like we can say stuff's rigged, I know, but the numbers also don't match with the amount of efforts put in. That it's not
That's
enough of
right.
us showing up that like we're not even beating them in output, let alone I voted and they're cheating. Okay, we don't
That's right.
match their numbers
Right.
or
If
let's do it.
we don't, yep, and I just feel like, boy, the whining and the complaining. And one of the things I really like about you is that you actually are doing something. You're trying to put feet to the things that you believe in, and that's what we need to do. I was thinking about a verse from Second Thessalonians. I think it's Second Thessalonians, maybe First Thessalonians 5, somewhere in that area of the Bible. The verse says that we are called. Yeah, in the Thessalonians, Paul talking to the Thessalonians said to the men and women there said, we should avoid even the appearance of evil. And I guess my exhortation to anyone who's listening to this right now is we have an opportunity to actually help the system work again the way it is supposed to work. But it cannot work the way that our founding fathers designed for it to work if we decide that we are not going to vote, that we're not going to run for office, that we're not going to engage in these conversations that are shaping our country. And frankly, the conversations that are doing the most damage are not happening at the federal level. They're happening at the local level. Why do we have drag queens in our parks? These are local issues. Many of our tax issues are local issues. The school are local issues. And yet we obsess over Donald Trump. We're going to obsess over the election. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't vote or whatever for the presidential elections, because obviously it's important. But our cities are dying because we're not participating locally. We're not being light locally. Well, how do you do that? You begin again to get engaged in the process, which was given to us so that we could have a say in how we are governed. And I believe that's kind of where this is sitting right now.
Well, and it brings me to Ezekiel 33, right? And it says that you have to be the watchman on the wall, right? He who hears the sound of the trumpet and did not take the warning, his blood would be upon himself. But he who had taken the warning, he would have saved his life. But if the watchman sees the sword is coming and does not blow the trumpet, so that the people are not warned and the sword comes and takes any one of them, that person is taken away in his iniquity. But his blood and his blood I will require at the watchman's hands. But if you do, then the blood is on the hearer's hands. So it's like the calling has to be more than if you can't take it of like, well, the idea that you need to be perfect at doing something just to get started is like, no. You see this warning sign is out there. And God has taught us that, like, that's the warning. Blow the trumpet. It doesn't have to sound like Dizzy Gillespie. It just needs to sound like a trumpet. Just blow it, Like, it doesn't matter what it is to get out there and do what you can do. You don't need to be in front of a camera or a great, orator or being somebody who can speak or being, but you can probably walk a neighborhood. You can probably call up your friends and just be like, come over for a poker night. Let's discuss this stuff. Whatever it is that is in your wheelhouse, like, that's what needs to be used in order to sound that trumpet.
Yeah.
It's on us to do so.
Yeah. I love that you said whatever it is that's in your wheelhouse, because I think people who are listening to this can go, okay, what am I good at?
Right.
Because everyone has influence, right?
Exactly.
We all have influence. Maybe you for sure have influence in your family, but you probably have influence at your church, influence maybe in your neighborhood. Use the influence that God has given you. We've got to start talking. We lob, bombs at each other over social media, and across the internet. And we need to be having conversations again. And because the Republicans haven't done it all right either. But what is happening in the country right now with the rise of political persecution, the labeling of parents who just want to understand what's happening in the schools to their children, that they're labeled as domestic terrorists, that someone like Siaka Massaquoi, who spent 76 seconds in the doorway at the U.S. Capitol, now is having 71 seconds, 71 seconds in a doorway in the U.S. Capitol is having your home raided. These are signs of a nation that's in trouble. And I think we need to pray, but you're trying to raise money, right? For your defense fund. Tell us a little bit about how people can do that.
Well, you can go to givesandgo.com/Siaka, Siaka. And, I think BP Group, who helped put that together, are good friends of ours. We go to church with them. Like I said, I was talking to someone earlier today how people got on this to want to start to help right away, which was amazing. So we had our Gifts and Go going out right away. Then we also got, Seth Dillon was able to speak up on my behalf right away. And people started coming around. I had the Post Millennial wrote an article first, then Daily Wire, Epoch Times, Red State, I think, to me personally, wrote the best one out of all of them. But within the first 24 hours, we controlled the narrative. And that right there is what conservatism and Republican side need to start to do. Instead of waiting to respond to these guys and go, no, well, really, this is what it really was. But by then you're trying to take someone away from where they've already planted their roots on an idea. And that's going to be harder 100 times out of 100 times compared to, boom, this is what it really is. Now the burden of proof is on them, much like, innocent until proven guilty. And so in this case, we saw people come around and, I think we just hit the 150,000 mark. So people are resonating.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it right here. It looks like you've got a goal of 210,000 and you're at 150,252 at the time of this recording. So I love that. So if my listeners are interested in supporting you in a legal defense fund, it's givesendgo.com/Siaka, Siaka. And I think you're seeing this, ordinary people. You've had some really big names obviously get behind you, big names in the conservative movement. But I think people are saying this is absurd what is happening. And one of the ways that we can help stand up against it is just to provide the people that are being politically persecuted, for lack of a better word, by this administration to come up alongside you and give you the financial help that you need. We're certainly praying for you guys. You've got your first baby due here, right? In a couple of months. Yeah. That's exciting.
And guess when the due date is supposed to be?
I'm scared to know. When is it?
March 15th, which was my sobriety date.
You know what? The Lord is so good.
I know, and he's one heck of a jokester too, because all you can do is laugh when you start thinking. I was like, wait,
yeah, because he's going to. Well, you know what he's saying to you, Siaka? He's saying, "I'm never going to let you forget this."
Yeah,
that's what the Lord's doing. I'm never going to let you forget this, because you will never forget the birth of your first child. No, you'll never forget the birth of any of your kids. I mean, ask me how I know, but I think I am excited because I think I hope. And this has obviously been, it's the reason I ran for Congress. It's why we've spent all of our lives trying to help people get their kids out of the government school system. We're not here for no reason, right? We're here in 2024. We could have been born in the 1800s or even 50 years from now. But for whatever reason, God has us here for such a time as this. And we need to ask the Lord, what is it that you want me to do? And I'm encouraging everybody, we remember we want to avoid even the appearance of evil. If you're not sure about an action, don't engage, right? Ask the Lord, come before the Lord. We want to be wise as serpents and gentle as doves. And we recognize injustice when we see it. And right before I started recording today, I was praying for us and just reminded that God is a God of justice. God also hates injustice. Micah 6:8 said, he has shown you, O man, what is good and what the Lord requires of you, that you love justice and mercy, and you walk humbly with the Lord. And Siaka, that's what I'm going to continue to pray, just justice and mercy over your life.
Thank you so much. That 24 hours from being arrested to getting back into Charlotte's hands and arms, I should say, the Lord was working throughout that whole time. They talk about how Paul worshiped and talked about the Lord, and the cells fell open. That's what happened. I'm in there, and the first night I'm on my knees praying the Lord's Prayer over and over. The guard ended up giving me a Bible that night, so I'm reading, falling asleep with the Bible in my hands. The next day, as we're dealing with, talking to our lawyers in our little room, I didn't know if my lawyer was going to make it. He come busting in from Florida on a red eye saying, I got you, and I'm standing in this room. He leaves. I fall on my knees and start singing Brandon Lake's Pray, Gratitude, because that's all I can do. I'm sitting here literally chained up on my wrists and my waist and my ankles, and all I can do is just praise him, because even in this dark time, he was just sitting there orchestrating, to the point where there was this tall guy. He was about 6'2", white guy, tatted up, and we had 4 other guys were being transferred, and I still had my regular clothes on. They're all in jumpsuits, and I had this sweater from this t-shirt company that had Jesus Saves on the back, right, on the cross. And the guy behind me goes, hey man, nice shirt. I'm like, oh yeah, well, Jesus saved my life. And we start talking God. We start talking the
That's
Bible.
Awesome.
We get into transport. Everyone else starts talking out, except for these other 1-2 guys. We get to the courthouse, and we're in the back, and we're waiting to come out one by one. And when we're back there, we're all back into a jail cell sitting waiting. And when the 5 of us are in there, we're talking. And the one guy asked me, he goes, "Hey man, can you pray for us?" So I got a chance to pray for everyone that was sitting in there, including myself. Even to the point where when we went through, by the time I went out, I was the last one. I walk out, 15 people were there to support me just from the bond. Half of them were from church, and they all stood up, boom, just ready. And Heidi, when I say I was blown away, I can't even tell you how wild that scene was to see that. And I'm thinking, this is amazing. And I'm walking up, and my wife's there with her Bible in hand and my wedding ring on her necklace, or cross necklace her godmother gave her, and she's standing tall, no hesitation. To when I got released, or I got okay to release, I go away, but I forget they didn't tell me to sign paperwork, and the DA had walked away and he didn't sign the paperwork. So technically I could have still been stuck in there till the following Tuesday. But one of the ladies that I go to church with, who named her little sports car after me, she goes running into the courthouse, finds the DA who's on the phone in the parking lot about to leave, brings him back to the courthouse. The clerk lets my lawyer sign out, and I was able to leave. At that point, I didn't know any of this was happening, but the Lord was still working, so much so that I was able to be reunited that night. Heidi, that experience alone, and I've had many others, I know the Lord is real. And I'm just trying to do my best for him,
Man. Well, Siaka, I think God's not near done with you, and I can't wait to see what happens. I hope you do more with the Babylon Bee, and I love watching. Those are some of my favorite videos, honestly, are the ones that you've done with the Babylon Bee.
Have you seen
I love. I mean, no.
Malarkey's okay. So Malarkey came out the day I got arrested, which is it's a cowboy spoof on how Joe Biden has all these different phrases that he says from movies and stuff and is mumbling. So the Bee did a whole spoof that they found the movie it came from, and I play a character in that. It's brilliant, but yeah, it actually came out the day I got arrested. So I don't know if that was just going
malarkey. Okay, I'll have to look it up. The one I was thinking about is the one where it's Californians moved to Texas.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Those are some of my absolute favorites. Yeah. Well, Siaka Massaquoi, you're just such a dear friend to me, and I know many other people are praying for you. And I really hope more people get on here. Let's fund this thing all the way, and really get that defense fund up there. But I know that you listen to the Lord. And we're going to continue just to pray that God does something unexpected, and that really the Bible teaches us what Satan means for evil, God can use for good, and he will use it for good. And I'm believing that for you and for Charlotte, as you guys are moving forward, that good things are coming in 2024. And we need to keep our eyes on Jesus. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Let's do it again.
Thank you for sure. At any time. I love you.
I love you too. You guys want more information on my friend Siaka Massaquoi? I will link back to his website. It's siakamassaquoi.us. I'll link back to it in the show notes today, and also to the Give, Send, Go fund. For those of you who want to help him with his legal defense, it's givesendgo.com/Siaka. I hope you guys will get involved. Thank you so much for listening to the Heidi St. John podcast today, and for leaving reviews for it. We really appreciate it. Don't forget to join me over at Faith That Speaks, at that community. I'm continuing to take you guys through the book of Esther. You want to find somebody who actually stood up in the middle of the culture and God used in amazing ways. What a time to study the book of Esther. You can do that with me at faiththatspeaks.com. Have a great day, everybody. Love your people well. And I'll see you right back here again at the intersection of faith and culture.